First off, first question been asking all of your candidates: why did you ultimately make this decision to run for mayor of New York City?
Well, thank you for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here, Kurt. And look, I'm running for mayor because we have several crises coming together at once. We need someone who will bring us together and solve it. And as someone who has spent my entire life as an advocate and an activist, I'm here for the crisis that we have to pull ourselves together to pull ourselves out of. And that is, yes, COVID, but really COVID fast tracked and deepened an affordability crisis for far too many of our folks, as well as a crisis that was a racial justice crisis that has been looming for, as we know, for a very long time. But here's the thing. I'm running because I'm a change maker. And that's what I've done my whole career as a civil rights lawyer and racial justice advocate. And change making means pulling folks together to solve the problems we share. And we can do that.
Your resume of experience is around government, obviously, whether we talk about being in the council to the mayor or we talk about being involved with the Civilian Complaint Review Board. But you also refer to yourself as not a conventional candidate. So putting that in together, why do you say that? Why is that how you refer to yourself? And why do you feel like that's a good thing in this race?
Yeah. Well, look, if you want the same old problems, keep electing the same old kind of leaders. I'm someone who, grew up the child of civil rights activists who went to law school here at Columbia to be a civil rights lawyer. I spent 25 years litigating, doing things like fighting for fair funding for public schools, fighting for access to health care, trying to save maternal and child care beds in Harlem. I've done it all, and I was doing it as an activist. I was doing it as an advocate. I was doing it trying to pull folks together in coalition in order to make that change. I didn't go into city government until 2014. And I went in because as someone who had been outside all those years, banging on the door saying, hey, we have ideas that will make government serve all our folks better and solve some of our problems. It was an opportunity to go inside and do what Shirley Chisholm, my shero, always talked about, which is like, instead of whimpering and complaining on the sidelines, make progress by implementing ideas. Ideas come from our people. It comes from listening and learning, and then partnering in leadership. That's what an advocate does. That's what I've done. That's what I did even when I went into city government, and it's what I will do as mayor.
Would a Wiley administration look different or starkly different than a de Blasio administration that we've had so far here in New York City up to this point? Or would there be parts of it that you would like to continue moving forward with? How would you approach that?
Well, let's start with, no one has ever looked like me or thought like me or talked like me been mayor of New York City before. We have 109 men. Time for something different. But yes, absolutely, because of course we'll look like the city of New York. That matters. This is a city that is so rich because we've got everyone. That our richness is our people, and we want to serve all of them. We want to reflect all of their experiences, and we will do that in city government. But it's also how we will change how government acts and behaves, because government has to partner with itself as well as with communities, because it can't be a one-size-fits-all solution all the time. We have 330 square miles. We've got 8.7 million people, 800 different languages spoken. It's not a one-size-fits-all. Government has to partner, focus, and get it done in ways that reflect what communities need.
When we talk about and we start getting into some of the issues, obviously, that face people here in New York City moving forward, it all starts with the pandemic. We begin with the pandemic because that really is overarching everything that's going on right now. First things first, your thoughts as far as the vaccination plan, how the rollout has gone, what you would do differently if elected in this situation.
Well, how about I'd make sure people got vaccines? That's what I'd do differently. Look, we've seen it. It's been a disaster. We have far too many people either struggling because they tried to get online to get an appointment, couldn't get online because they don't have a way to get online. And as we saw, people traveling long distances to get to centers, people in the community not being able to access their own vaccine centers. That is a problem, and we cannot any longer see communities that had the highest death rates from COVID, 25,000 of our people, of our neighbors, of our friends, but over 3/4 of them in the same handful of neighborhoods. And yet those were the neighborhoods where folks couldn't get vaccinated. No, we have to have a partnership with our faith-based community leaders, with our community-based organizations. We have to make sure that folks have vaccine and that there are different ways for people to sign up to get them who need them. And we have to make sure we understand the number of people who need them. So I would have definitely had a geographic strategy as well as a strategy about who was most vulnerable because of age, because of being in a nursing home, who essential workers were. But those community partnerships mean everything. I'll give you one quick example. We had a church here in Central Brooklyn, Black Baptist Church, finally convinced the city to give it some tests because we had that problem with testing. They got 500 people tested in 2 days. Now, making and understanding those kinds of partnerships to reach people, that makes us stronger. And that's what I would do.
We're hearing obviously a lot about the importance of outreach, especially to the communities that have been hit so hard by this pandemic, and making sure that, you know, those communities get the necessities they need, they get the support they need. And part of that is the economy, and part of that is small businesses, because they are obviously a major fabric of those communities. How can we help them to get through this and make sure that they are open and up and running on the other side of this, whenever that is?
Well, first of all, we have to understand what ails them. One of the things is they can't pay the rent. And commercial rent was a problem for too many of our small businesses even before COVID hit. And then when they had to shutter, well, then of course they couldn't pay. So we have to have grants programs. We have to make sure that we're looking at the tax abatements that might be necessary to help them hold on to their space. The other thing, though, that we have to do is recognize that we have a regulatory problem for too many small businesses. 95% of our businesses are small and they employ over half of our people. So this is our economy as well as the backbone of our communities that help keep us sane and keep us served. So one of the things we have to do is like cut through some of that red tape that right now is choking them, because we need them to survive. And the other thing we have to make sure we do is change what we do as government as a whole, whether it's zoning and open streets, which we saw was a lifesaver both for us psychologically in so many communities so that we could see each other and see each other safely, but also giving new business models for our restaurants because they could spill out onto the streets, but finding more ways to make that permanent. And also go to federal government. There's an act right now in the federal government called the Restaurant Act. It's going to save and help a lot of restaurants stay open. That's a huge part of our economy, and we've got to make sure that happens.
You know, another one of your campaign statements that, you know, is everywhere, and it's caught my attention, is that you say you want all New Yorkers to be able to afford to live with dignity. What does that mean to you, and what do you feel like? What does that explain exactly what that means to you, I guess?
Yeah. You know, look, we had an affordability problem before COVID that COVID made worse. We had a policing problem where folks, of course, want to be safe from crime, but they also want to be safe from police violence. We had all those things happening. We had communities that had very high unemployment rates before COVID, and a homeless crisis, which is an affordability crisis, as well as a failure to deliver mental health services. So dignity means we can develop, because we do need to grow, but we can do it without displacing people. We can create more affordable housing at prices that are really affordable for people. That's dignity. It means that we can have public safety. We can focus police on the job. The job are the priorities that communities need police to do, like keeping illegal guns out of our communities. But it's not being mental health responders. That's not why police officers sign up for the force. So we need to right size the police department, focused on what they should be focused on, and make sure our resources, our precious dollars, are ensuring that you have someone to call that's a mental health professional if you have an emergency, a mental health emergency. And with street homelessness, let's just take that. We can align our public resources that we already have around homelessness to get people into housing with the supportive services that help them stay in housing. So that is mental health. That can be drug addiction support and rehabilitation. And oftentimes we know this from the research, we know this from where we've done it in the city, helps people get jobs and stay in the housing. That keeps us all safe, but it's also dignity. It means it's dignity in our streets, but it's also dignity for our people because they start to get what they need. And we can all stay. We can all stay here and it can still be our city, every last one of us.
So many issues that we can get into here. I mean, you just mentioned two of them there, whether it be housing and public safety, and I want to go back to those in just one second. But the other issue that I think came up big time here with the pandemic and got caught up in everybody's attention was the city's education system and what we saw between the differences in the education system, the access to broadband, the access to the education system, depending on where you live here in the city. How would you address that moving forward and make sure that every New Yorker gets the education that they deserve?
Yeah, look, our education, our schools need to see every single one of our kids as worthy of an excellent education. And I'm a mom. I have two daughters. If I put all those years together, I've got 15 years in the public school system, elementary school, middle school, and high school, navigating that process. I can tell you right now that as parents are sitting around wondering how they get a year back of their kids' educational lives, that this is a terrible disservice that we did to parents because Bill de Blasio didn't close the schools fast enough for public safety, but also didn't partner sufficiently with our teachers, with our principals, with our parents to decide and be clear when and how schools would reopen that would keep them safe and what we were going to invest in, because we should have been investing in the ability of our teachers and our principals to deliver online learning. We should have spent the summer doing that. Okay, but we didn't. But here's what we'll fix. First of all, we'll make sure that we're investing in the tools that we have learned can work better for us. That's making sure our kids have access to broadband, even if they're in a homeless shelter. We have 111,000 kids in homeless shelters who weren't being treated as if they deserved an excellent education. We can fix that. I actually am the person who got every single unit at Queensbridge Houses, largest public housing development in New York City, free broadband to every unit, showing city government it could do something it had never done before. We can do more of that. But the other thing is to really understand we have to invest in our facilities being safe. That means smaller class sizes. That means supporting our teachers so they can deliver using technology where it's available, making it better. But we have models right now in this city. We have some amazing innovations happening in schools we're not lifting up and making available to more of our students, like P-TECH, which is a program that shows that even if you're behind grade level, you can do advanced level work, college level work, and it's technology focused. That's an incredible model we want to invest in and expand, and there are others like that. So seeing the innovations in the good and expanding on it, investing in it, and making sure that our students are getting one other thing, and that's trauma-informed care, because so many of our students are traumatized as a result of COVID. That impacts their learning. And we're going to have counselors in our schools that are going to create student support teams so our students get the support they need.
You know, I want to get back to the housing issue because you were talking about just a second ago, and obviously housing as a human right is something we've heard a lot during this campaign. And people obviously on the street always talk about, they hear the term affordable housing and they always say the same thing. Well, affordable to who? It's not affordable to me. I can't afford to live here. So running into that issue, and it's been for a long time, how do you address that issue? And now obviously the pandemic has made things worse between people being scared of being evicted. How do you address these issues that are affecting so many people here in the city, and especially in some of the outer boroughs?
So we've got plans, and they're plans that I am proposing because I can do them without permission from Albany or money from Washington. Not because I'm not going to partner with Albany or go to Washington. I am going to get our resources that we need. But I say that because there's a lot of power in that mayoral seat to be creative and to solve our problems. So let me give you one example. We've got New Deal New York. I have the power as mayor to raise and spend $10 billion for capital construction. That's just a fancy way of saying get stuff built. but we can build stuff that focuses on our problems, like affordable housing. That's a capital construction budget item, but making it affordable for very low and extremely low income people, not only for people, we do need middle class housing. Let me be clear. We need what we call workforce housing, but we haven't been getting and building enough housing for folks making $25,000 a year, $35,000 a year, $50,000 a year. We do have to do that. And that's what that can do. But at the same time, we're creating 100,000 new jobs when we do that, new jobs and high road jobs, union jobs, jobs with good pay and benefits. And we will do some local targeting hiring. We will work with the unions in the pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship programs. The reason that matters is we have to make sure more money is going in the pockets of our workforce so they can pay the rent. And we have an eviction moratorium proposal where we're not just focused, we're going to help people stay in their housing and not be evicted, because that's what the homeless crisis is. But we're also recognizing we have small landlords. We have homeowners who rent. We have people who own small buildings. They're not rich. And in fact, this is how they've been creating and providing some resources for their families. We're going to create a subsidy structure for small landlords, 1 to 5 buildings, homeowners, so that as we're helping them keep their renters in their apartments, in their units, we're also making sure they can hold on to their property, because we need to do that too, to ensure that people can take care of their families, because that is dignity.
Maya, you talked about it earlier, you touched on it briefly, but if you were to be elected, it would be a very historic victory here in New York City. Have you even allowed yourself to begin thinking about that? And have you started putting that into that thought into your minds of what that would mean to you and mean to the city?
I think I have heard it from others. And I had a 9-year-old journalist who interviewed me, who is a young woman who is also Black. And she asked me what it meant for me as a Black woman to run for mayor and be the next mayor of New York City. And I said, well, let me ask you a question. What does it mean to you? And she said, it means so much if I see somebody who looks like me doing something we've never had before, because it tells me I can do whatever I want. And that's what it means. But it also means something else. It means this is a city that recognizes we're just one city. We're just one city, and that we can see each other, really see each other for what we have to contribute and what will pull us together. And that's recognizing it's about all of us. And that's what I see when I think about that vantage point. It's what I see every day when I'm talking with and meeting with New Yorkers. And it's why I love this city so much. And it's why we coming back bigger, badder, stronger, more fair, and more just. And that is something I can't wait for.
It's funny you say it like that, and I can see the passion in your eyes when you just mention it there at the end there. But I mean, whenever we talk about all these issues facing New York City, I always feel like it comes off as we're talking about, everything that's wrong with the city and the things that need to be fixed. But if you're running for mayor of New York City to lead this city and to lead all the millions of people that live here, you have to love something about this city. There's got to be something about it that you want to lead that. For you, what is it about New York City that is just so special to you?
New Yorkers get it done. And in a crisis in particular, we see who we are. I mean, during COVID, and I know you probably saw this too, Kurt, we had restaurants shuttered, but they knew people were going hungry. So what did they do? They fed them. We saw people, I myself was going to food pantries to volunteer. We saw people showing up in droves, even at the height, April, when we were all so terrified of the virus, but it wasn't keeping folks home. People were on looking for their neighbors who needed something delivered because they were shut in and elderly and too afraid to go out. We step up because we love this city and we take care of each other. And there's never a better time. I mean, I don't want a COVID crisis. I don't ever want another crisis. I didn't want a Hurricane Sandy. I didn't want a 9/11. I didn't want an economic crisis of the 70s. We don't want any of those crises. But by God, challenge a New Yorker and say we can't do something and just watch us. And that's what I love about this city.
My two fun questions for you here, because I'm gonna lighten it up even more, and then I've got one more serious question for you at the end here. So
Uh-oh,
first,
a Mets question is coming. Is it a Mets question?
maybe we'll see. We'll see if we have time. Okay, I'm gonna put you on the spot here, as I've done with everybody here. What is your favorite restaurant in all of New York City? What is your go-to spot?
You know, that's not even fair because I eat my way across the city, and it's one of the things I love about the city. You know, if it's my neighborhood, it's a restaurant called The Farm. I love it. If it's in Harlem, it's Melba's slamming food. If it's the Lower East Side, it's Il Posto Accanto, which is an amazing Italian restaurant. If it's Southeast Queens, it's yeah, I look. It's Portofino because Carmine, when you walk through that door, his arms are like this. They are open. They are loving. You get warmed in every single way. I could go on, but but I refuse to pick just one because there are too many.
I asked the question mostly just so I can get a list of more places for me to check out once everything's back open again. So I get lots of good
I,
choices.
I, I, I'll make sure you know where to find me, and I'll give you my list.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I will take you up on that. Okay. What is something about you that people may not know? What is a fun fact about you that, people may not know about you from just reading campaign materials or hearing you speak? What's something fun about you?
Well, I was going to say I'm a cat lover and I got 3 cats, but I can't say that one because probably I think by this point everyone knows that about me. So I'll give you the big secret. I'm what you call a blurred, a black nerd. I love science fiction and science fantasy. Star Trek, Star Wars, that's me, and all the books.
You have a collection? You have anything that we
I got a collection. I will tell you one of my favorite authors, N.K. Jemisin. She is a Brooklynite. She is a Black woman. She's got some phenomenal books. I highly recommend them, but there are many. But I'll start with her.
Okay, fair enough. Good thing for everybody to check out then. Maya, last thing for you here. This is obviously going to be a big election, a big primary, ranked choice voting making its debut, obviously, in for the mayoral race. People are going to have a lot of candidates to pick from, and up to 5 people to put on the ballot there. What do you want people to remember about you and have in the back of their minds about you when they head in there to vote that ensures that they'll fill in the bubble next to your name?
Just remember that I am the change maker who doesn't have all the ideas, because I know that New Yorkers are the most amazing, innovative people, and that part of what government will be when I am mayor is a partner. You will have someone who listens and learns and leads with you, and that's what I want you to remember.